All right, good morning, guys. Today we're going to do lesson 116, but first, for a warm-up, let's first say, what is slope? What over what? The second question I have is the square root of 5 squared minus 3 squared plus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 squared. And the third question, let's do 3 yards. Well, let's just do those. Let's just do those. So please pause right now as you answer these questions and then restart once you're ready to go. So the first one, I hope you guys know that slope is rise over run. And once again, that's from the line. So say you have a point down here, like -1, -1, and it goes up to this point. We would say then it has a rise of 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would have 4. And you went over 2, 1, 2, and 4 over 2. This line would have a slope of 2. And we're going to be dealing with this today, so you might want to check out that slope lesson if you didn't understand. For number 2, hopefully you guys know that you're going to square your numbers first. 25 minus 9 is the square root of 16. 25 minus 16 is 9. So then it's just square root of 16, which is 4. Square root of 9 is 3. And your final answer is 7. Now, for today, here is the bread and the butter of not only today, but next year. Slope-intercept equation. So, please write down this nice thing. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. And then what I'd like you to write down is that m stands for slope. And you guys know that slope is rise over run, because we just went through that. And once again, you might want to write this slope-intercept equation. And you'll actually find this equation right on my wall because it's that important. The next thing, B stands for your y-intercept. Your y-intercept. That's why it's called slope-intercept form, because you are consistently finding the slope value, you're consistently finding the y value, and then you're able to graph. Now, I know some of you are probably like, well, what's a y-intercept? Well, a y-intercept of a line is where it crosses the y-axis. That's the y-axis, this is the x-axis. So that is called your y-intercept. That value, whatever it is. It can be positive, it can be negative, it can be 0 even. But it's always where the line runs into your y-intercept. So, for today, we're going to be first identifying what is the slope, what is the y-intercept. We're going to be able to graph, which is the shortcut than making a table. And then we're also going to be able to look at a graph and write the equation. So, here we go. Let's first get practice. Example 1. Identify the slope and y-intercept of each equation. So, here's our first equation. Here's our second and our third. Okay. So if we are identifying the slope and the y-intercept of these equations, what I would ask you guys to do is write down y equals mx plus b. And then you just go slope equals, and I'm just going to make a column. And then I'm going to go y-intercept equals. And you can do anything that works for you. Now, if you're asking yourself, okay, what's slope? What's the number in front of x? And the number in front of x for this one is actually a -1. So you just go slope is -1. Y-intercept, what's in place of b? It's 7. The next one, you ask yourself, what's slope? It's always the value in front of x. Because look at m is in front of x. So it's actually 1. So slope equals 1. But then you don't see anything over here. Well, duh, because it's just 0. So you put y-intercept equals 0. And then for the next one, slope. I'm going to give you a moment to identify the slope in the y-intercept. And hopefully you ask yourself slope. It's always the value in front of x. Slope is 1/3. The y-intercept, this one's a little tricky because there's a negative. So it's actually a -2. So I'm actually going to give you another slide, just like this one. And I'm going to ask you to identify the slope in the y-intercept of some new ones. Let's go y equals -5x plus 1. Let's go y equals -x. And let's go y equals 5/3 x minus 2. Now, when we're identifying slope and y-intercept, once again, let's start getting used to letters. So slope in this case is -5. The y-intercept, the b value, the beginning point is 1. Right here, your slope is the value in front of x, which is actually a -1. So you just go -1. And b is 0 because there's nothing after it. Right here, your slope is 5/3. And your y-intercept is -2. Now, some of you are probably wondering, where did m and b come from? Right in your equation. And you might want to put m as your moving point and b is your beginning point. Moving point, beginning point. Because next, we're actually going to learn how to graph these. And let's just take a simple one to start with. To be able to graph, you first just identify what is your slope, what is your y-intercept. So if we do that in this one, your slope, it's the value in front of x. It's 1. What's your y-intercept? Well, it's 3. I told you to put this as beginning point. B stands for beginning point. M stands for moving point. Watch this. Beginning point. You go up 1, 2, 3. You place your dot. Slope is 1, but it actually is 1/1. And all you have to do, slope stands for rise over run, is go to this point. You go up 1, over to the right 1. Go up 1 from this point, over to the right 1. And there is your line, instead of making a table. Identify your slope, identify your y-intercept. Always start with your beginning point. Because your y-intercept is 3, we went up 3, we put our first dot. The m, the moving point, that means that you just go up 1/1, up 1/1. So let's try another one. 12.1. Let's graph y equals -2x plus 3. So once again, identify your slope, identify your y-intercept, and then you graph. And after this, we'll do one more. But right here, if we do this one, slope, hopefully you guys said, was -2. And -2 is actually just -2 over 1. Your y-intercept is 3 once again. Well, sorry, I didn't give you a new y-intercept. You go up 1, 2, 3. You always start there. Always start with your y-intercept. That's your beginning point. That's why B, right? If you think about our equation, y equals mx plus b, always start with your y-intercept. Then for slope, you have to ask yourself, how do you rise -2? And I hope you know you just go down 2 over to the right 1. Down 2 to the right 1. Down 2 to the right 1. And then when you graph your line, it's like that. So let's try one more. And if you're getting it, it's wonderful. So let's graph then. Y equals -1/3 x minus 2. And once again, start with your slope. Identify your y-intercept. And maybe I just confused some people. I just mean identify these two, knowing that you always graph your beginning point first. Thanks, you guys. Just give me 1 second. All right. So hopefully you guys said the slope is -1/3 because that's what's in front of x. Hopefully you also said that your y-intercept is -2 because the equation, it's all positive. So anytime there's a negative, that means that that value is negative. So then when we graph it, you start at -2. So you go down 2, you put your dot. With your slope being -1/3, that means you have to rise. Rising to negative means you go down 1 and then you go right 1, 2, 3. You go down 1 and then right 1, 2, 3. And if you notice, a negative slope means it's going down. That's all I have for you today. Y equals mx plus b. That is a very important equation. Please let me know if you have any questions on it. But otherwise, you have lesson 116. It is on page 813. Did I just say 813? Yeah. Okay, thank you. E through H, do the first 10 starred along with, I think 28 is a starred, which I just skip over, and 29, because those are order of operations, and I want you guys to be solid with that. Thank you very much. You don't need graph paper to graph these. You can just do them as I did in here. Otherwise, thanks for your time. Okay.